of Washington, where students are demanding the removal of the statue of Washington. That's George Washington saying, quote, "Statues in place at the University of Washington are preservers of our dark past. This is not a history that should be glorified and celebrated as it perpetuates white supremacy and preserves its historical imposition. Thus, the George Washington statue, along with all other that symbolizes racist figures, should be removed from the University of Washington." Here to react is campus reform correspondent at the University of Washington School of Law, Justin Brascher. Justin, how did it come to this?
That's a great question. This is just another further example of how we as a society cannot seem to separate the good that somebody has done from the evil. This particular petition was brought forth by one of the student unions on campus and has actually been adopted by the school newspaper. So the school newspaper at this point is calling for the removal of the statue. And all of this dates back to a petition that came in August. But it really is just unfortunate to see this sort of attitude towards our founding fathers. Listen, I don't, and I certainly don't believe that this program does condone slavery or racism in any way. But that doesn't mean that without George Washington, we would not have a country, let alone a state, let alone a university named after him.
Right.
So to think that we can simply get rid of all that history and forget about it is ridiculous and unfortunate.
Sadly, it was slavery was in every continent on the planet, and it was something he was born into. And that is part of George Washington's story. The American founding fathers didn't found a country and didn't say we are perfect. We walk on water. In fact, I don't think there's only one person that did walk on water, but I have my brain room working on that. Here's the statement from the University of Washington. We support a re-examination of campus symbols, figures, or names that are connected with racism, past or present. We also believe it's important to consider additional opportunities for symbols or namings that more fully recognize biopic contributions to our community, especially to our state and university. If George Washington offends you, why are you going to George Washington Law School? Pick another place without George Washington's name on it.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I have been an undergraduate student here for 4 years, and now I'm in my third year of law school. So I guess it's a little late for me to change schools, right? But we're not just seeing this at the University of Washington. We are seeing this across the country, and the Leadership Institute's campusreform.org has been documenting this. You saw this at another school named after George Washington, George Washington University. A bust of him was toppled there over the summer. You saw at Washington and Lee University, there was a petition to get the pictures taken off of the diploma of Washington and Lee. So this is not just some Seattle thing just happening here. This is a nationwide thing that's going on, and it's not just some fringe collegiate thing either. This is a mainstream political tool being used right now. We saw Senator Tammy Duckworth say over the summer that it's time to listen to the argument for taking down these statues. In San Francisco, you've got 44 public schools that are changing their names, taking down the names of historical figures like Washington and Lincoln, and even Senator Dianne Feinstein. So this is not just some fringe thing happening up here on a college campus. This is mainstream now.
And Justin, the thing is, nobody's covering up that Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, James Madison, George Washington had slaves. John Adams didn't. But that's part of the story. No one's ever ducked it. But you flip on the other side and say how the American story was born, the principles they put into place, the Declaration of Independence that they wrote, the Constitution that they passed, set up the groundwork for spiraling freedom and liberty around the world. At the same time, as future generations, we correct, we get better. But we don't cancel until now. What is it about this generation that is so high and mighty and perfect that they want to cancel everything prior?
That's a great question. We have this attitude, it seems like my generation does, that we figured it out and no one else knew what they were doing before us. And you can definitely see it on campuses, including mine, this almost disgust, this palpable disgust towards our founding fathers and our fundamental values and traditional upbringing as a country. The words American exceptionalism are practically a swear word around here. Gotcha. And it's really unfortunate to see. And as we continue to go further and further down this road and further separate us from what founded us as a country, this is what we're seeing.
Justin, yeah, if you wreck the foundation, there's nothing to keep us together. Justin Brascher, very well put. I love the way you spelled it out, and I don't think there's ever any reason to ever accept it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, the Biden administration paving the way for nuclear talks with Iran. But just how long have they been in communication with Tehran? We're just learning some disturbing news now.